We're focusing on your greenside chipping, and you've told us that your main issue is strike related, and more specifically, it's an inconsistency of strike across the face between the heel and the toe. Now, it's best to think of the solution to this as being skill-based as opposed to a technical issue. And what we mean by that is there's going to be no need to rebuild your golf swing or even change a major aspect of it. It's more a case of working on a skill, and that skill is your ability to control how far away from you the club is going to be when it arrives at impact. So if we look a little bit closer at that, if I set up with the ball out in the middle of the club face, and then I'm going to hit the ball out of the heel, I will have moved the club further away from me from setup to impact. If I hit the ball out of the toe, I would have moved the club closer to me from setup to impact. So if we have an inconsistent strike across the face, we don't have the control that we'd like to have of this particular aspect of the swing. Now, it's good to work on this by actually making these adjustments intentionally. So for example, I have a setup here with 3 tees. And if I set up to the middle tee and want to hit the outer tee, I would intentionally make sure I get the club further away from me when it arrives at impact. And that way I'll be able to hit the outer tee and leave the middle and the closer tee. On the other hand, if I was to take the same setup and I wanted to hit the tee that's closest to me, I would have to intentionally move the club closer to me to hit that tee. So I'm intentionally making these adjustments through skill as opposed to a very conscious change of the technique. So this is a very good test or challenge, if you will, to see if you have some amount of ability to be able to control these moves. So set up to the middle tee and intentionally choose one of the others to hit away. So let's start with the outer tee first, and then go back to the same setup without changing anything at all and hit the inner tee. And then of course the last one is to hit the middle tee. Now, if you're able to complete that challenge, it shows that you have the ability to alter the distance between you and the club when it arrives at impact. And that means if you can do both sides of neutral, you can also find the middle ground, which is of course neutral. When you hit shots, you can also use tees, but at this time as feedback. So if you place a tee either side of the golf ball, being able to hit the ball out the middle of the face means that you will miss both of those tees. Now, the benefit of hitting the tee, not only do you realize that you haven't hit the middle of the face, but depending on the tee that you hit, you will know where you hit the ball. So if you hit the outer tee, you will have hit the ball out of the heel of the club, and if you hit the inner tee, you would have hit the ball out of the toe of the club. Obviously, the goal here is to be able to hit shots without disturbing either of the tees, and that means we're striking the ball reasonably well. So if you'd like, you can have a few practice rehearsals where you're simply starting from setup and making a reasonably slow backswing and downswing, and you pause just before impact. Now ideally you're going to use the swing that you need for the shot that you're facing. A slow backswing, bring it down to the ball and pause. Now that will show you where you might be hitting the ball on the club face. You could even make a few practice swings where you intentionally bring it down and pause with the ball in the heel, and then intentionally bring it down and pause with the ball on the toe. So you're feeling the difference between these locations. Now, of course, with this drill, we're trying to hit the middle of the face, and it's not a practice swing or a slow motion move that's going to show us, it's actually hitting the shot. So again, take your setup, and our main focus is whether or not we can leave those tees in place.